Okay, guys. Let me get my notes back. So, what just happened to us? Our biggest setback yet in this journey. We just recorded a full podcast and it did not record.
Talk about brutal.
Talk about brutal.
It is now 11:30 at night.
Yeah.
We've gone back and forth about re-recording this, and you know what? We got to do it right.
Yeah, quality. Quality comes first,
So
especially
we're doing
this young into our journey.
We're doing it right.
We're doing it right.
Trial 2.
All right. So, podcast episode 4, week 7 review, week 8 preview. We are on YouTube now. We got the cameras set up. Let me slide over. That one looks like I might not be fully in the picture. There we go. Really happy to be on YouTube now. You guys can comment directly on our videos. Tell us what you like. Tell us what you don't like. Give us some questions going forward about things you want to see, about questions you have for the marbles. If you want to hear some marbles talked about more, let us know. But so Shim, first things first. Your curse is broken.
Feels good.
It's got to.
It feels real good.
It's got to.
I was looking really. It wasn't looking good
No,
for my side coming into the weekend. But great performance going in. Saturday, Sunday, we pulled it out. Feels good. It's a weird feeling, honestly.
It must
making it another week.
Yeah.
It just
4 weeks straight of suffering.
I woke up this morning. I was like, hey, maybe I should pick another team. And I was like, wait, hold on. I made the cut. It's a weird feeling.
Speaking of, Limers survived by 8 points. They just survived over Gliding Glaciers and Rojo Rollers, 2 teams that we were very high on, that I think everyone was very high on. Rojo Rollers. So not much you can really say. They podiumed. They came in first last week. They came in third the week before. And that's something that I think we have to talk about. Just we'll get into the track in a minute, but it's just such an interesting thing that happened to them. They were, like I said, first and third the last 2 weeks, and then come in last with the lowest scoring point total in Marble Survival 100 so far, with 39 points.
Honestly, it's shocking.
Yeah.
To see it. Just pulling up the numbers here. Rojo Rollers had 112 points the week prior.
Yeah.
They finished with 39.
It's a fall from grace like we've never seen. It's a collapse that we've never seen throughout really any sport. I don't even know if you can come up with an analogy that's like it, but like we said, it's if these marbles are not going to get rewarded for coming in the top 3 spots or in the top 10 spots, whatever spots, the question now has to be, do you even want to come in those top spots? Because like we saw with Rojo Rollers, like we've seen with Gliding Glaciers now, if you're pushing your athletes to be in the top of the table, they're running out of gas down the stretch.
For sure. I think it's a thing with fatigue. I think it's a thing with overconfidence. And something that needs to be said is this a trend?
Yeah.
We're going to talk about other racers that have fallen from grace,
right,
on the podium weeks prior, and now facing elimination.
Yeah.
Is this a thing where the fatigue gets to them? Rojo Uno was running great, and all of a sudden, what happened? I mean, we're talking about a racer that came, 7 points in round 1, and then finished with a 1, second to last, and then a DNF in round 4. There's something going on.
We might as well say it.
Something going on.
So the week before this, Green Ducks got eliminated, whereas the week before that, they were first place. So now it's a bit of a trend. Green Ducks, first place to eliminated. Rojo Rollers, first place to eliminated. The question now remains, where does this put teams like Team Momo, who just came in first this past week? And we'll get to that once we get to the...
I mean, I think of those Blackjacks. I was a Blackjack fan there for a week.
Yeah.
You said it before. I think it was a podium finish in week 2, week 3?
Week one. First place, week 1, Blackjacks.
And then all of a sudden, a couple weeks later, they're done.
Yeah.
So I think we're seeing a trend here. I don't know if anybody listening has seen this trend that we see.
Yeah.
But it's something to be concerned about, especially if you're a Momo fan.
It's time to beg the question, are Marble Analytics taking over this league? It's one that probably should be asked, because you have to look at the analytics. You have to look at the trends. What we're seeing now is that the teams that come in the top spot, Rojo Rollers have been up there all race. It's no wonder that they're gassed. And they're not getting rewarded for these top finishes. So.
Absolutely. Which is a different problem all in itself. I mean, we brought it up a couple of weeks ago. These racers should be rewarded for their podium finishes.
100%.
I think we both agree on that.
We do, but the rules are the rules.
Rules are the rules, and I think the racers have to adapt to that.
100%.
The ruling. If I'm the Pinkies, if I'm Team Primary, if I'm the Gliding Glaciers, obviously they're not around. Rangers.
Yeah.
maybe I'm just kind of hanging around in the pack. Just finish 5 to 15.
Yeah, when we fully dive into this review, I want to talk about a couple marbles that I have my eyes on that I love the way they're playing. I think their coaches might have been on top of this. They might have been out in front of it. And I
Analytics
think
people behind the scenes, maybe. You never know.
absolutely.
Yeah.
And I think the teams that are now starting to see this need to adapt. It's time to adapt. If the coaches don't, if they're too old school, they say no, we want to win the race. We might be seeing them in danger.
100%. 100%.
So let's talk about this track, this week 7 track that is now gone. The first thing I wanted to bring up was just the Gauss arrow. Greg seemed to kind of be confused about it as well. I'm not sure if it's supposed to have any action to it, but it's listed as an obstacle on the listing pre-race. So I just, what are your thoughts on it? Personally, I didn't really see it having much of an impact. It just seemed like more of a standalone obstacle than it did an action obstacle.
I mean, I thought, obviously we watched the races together. It was kind of a non-factor for both of us.
Yeah.
I thought maybe it divided or slowed down the racers in some manner.
Right.
But it was kind of a non-factor for me. I didn't. It wasn't my favorite obstacle.
No.
It maybe slowed the racers down a little bit. I look at obstacles like the ball bearings. I mean, obviously we've talked about that many times. The battering ram, the spinning maces, which we'll probably talk about here in a second.
Yeah. Get into them now if you'd like.
Yeah, I mean, you guys know, if you're an avid listener here, we're on week 4, week 5 of the episode 4 of the podcast. I'm a big battering ram guy.
Yeah.
Going into that, I thought it wasn't as big of a factor
Yep.
this week as it has been in previous races.
Yep.
Call it, maybe it's at the end of the race, maybe the placement of it. I'd love to hear your opinion on that. But you know what? It wasn't as substantial to these racers as we saw in the past.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you. I think a couple things. It's tough to follow up an obstacle like the spinning maces. I mean, it just wreaked so much havoc this week on a number of racers. To follow that up, so not only did it have a dud week in terms of its impact, but it also, the cameras, kind of, the where it's positioned on the track, it didn't get a lot of camera time.
Yeah.
So I think we might have just also missed that. But I agree with you. I think it remains one of my favorite obstacles, because when you see it make impact with a good marble and send it 10 feet back up the track,
fantastic.
there's nothing like it.
But I thought this placement of those spinning maces, I mean, I love the battering ram, but the spinning maces, I thought the placement of it was great. It
was
kind of, it brought speed to the track.
It did.
Because you could get boosted forward. People forget that.
It was great. You either, if you're on the right side of it, you're getting launched backwards, left side, you're getting launched forward. So it's a lot about a strategy for these racers of where they want to enter that spinning mace.
Absolutely. And kind of earlier in the track, we saw the ball bearings, we saw the fidget spinners.
Yep.
Obviously, we're both fans of that. I would love to hear what, the audience, is there anybody out there that doesn't like those obstacles? Because we love them. Every time we see them go off, we love them.
Yeah, we'd love to hear all your thoughts on all the obstacles. But fidget spinners is one that we actually didn't touch on. The fidget spinners are great to me. I love them.
They're great,
especially early on, because it's like the spinning mace. You can get launched forward, but most of the time you're getting launched back. So if you're a marble that's triggering that, you're really helping out your own case, because you're hurting the back of the competition.
100%. We even saw, going to the ball bearings, we saw those O-Rangers get absolutely crippled by those ball bearings.
Yeah.
Obviously you're an O-Ranger fan, but great content in itself, seeing those ball bearings get to work.
It was. I'm an O-Rangers fan, but I'm also a big ball bearings fan. So to see those two guys like collide, and the O-Rangers just hit them.
Oh, it was awesome.
Hit them just 3 times in a row during race 1. So race 1 is really when I want to make an impact.
Yeah, and we'll talk about that later.
We absolutely will. Track, it was a solid track. Spinning maces were great. Battering ram a little bit under highlighted, but always still nice to see. And it was nice to see the end of the race just be quick. It was a fun track. One other note: DNFs. Only 3 this week. There was none early in the week, and then Greg used his announcer jinx and said no DNF so far, and then there were 2 in the following race. Can you guess 2 out of those 3 teams that were DNF'd?
So, just going off the standings, I know Rojo Uno DNF'd once. I'm gonna guess, was it Pinkies that DNF'd?
It was Rojo Rollers, Gliding Glaciers, the bottom 2 teams, and then Savage Speeders, who came in 4th.
Wow.
And I think they're probably a little happy about that. Not happy, but like we said, being in the top 3 might not be the best thing for them. So to come in 4th, not necessarily that bad of a thing.
Yeah. Do you think it's an advantage maybe to DNF? Obviously, it's never an advantage, but no. Did it maybe give them some extra rest there?
Maybe they only had to play half the track,
Yeah.
and so
I
going
mean,
into the next day, they were well rested.
yeah. I mean, again, maybe, I don't know. It's hard to think about there.
It is, but I like that point. I didn't think about that. And then finally, epic final race. 3 marbles going for it. We had Limers and Gliding Glaciers were tied going into the final race, so it was really just a matter of who came out on top there.
It was pretty shocking to me. Being a Limers fan, obviously, if you follow this pod, I am a week to week fan of a couple teams, but obviously I've had bad luck with my teams. The Limers showed out, and credit to Slime and Lime.
Well,
That's
good.
a handful. Credit to the squad there because they really came out on Elimination Sunday and performed.
Seeing that you were tied with Gliding Glaciers, a team that's been atop the table, and with your pedigree, I was almost positive that the Limers were not going to make it out. But
I would agree with you.
But they had a good finish. I believe they came in. It was top 10. I think they came in 7th. And
they did.
Gliding Glaciers were bottom 5, so they ended up clear by 8 points. And Rojo Rollers and Gliding Glaciers, it's tough to see those two teams go. But like we just touched on, they're two teams that have been top of the table for so much of this competition, and you got to believe that that's having an effect on the stamina of these racers.
100%. I mean, it's kind of sad to see them go because obviously it's 2 storied franchises. But you know what? I think it points to the trend we've been talking about, and hopefully, some of those marble teams have picked up on that trend.
Yeah, out of the 6 prior weeks, Rojo Rollers podiumed in the previous 2 and 3 times overall. So half of the races they podiumed. Wow. So you just have to imagine that they were getting tired out there, and I think that might be a coaching error.
And it begs the question: would they still be there if we had some point structure, for points podiuming?
You think? I mean, they'd have to be, but you'd also. It's tough to even imagine that scenario because other marbles would probably be also going for the top spot. I think,
absolutely.
I think there are some other marbles that are taking it a little easier, which I actually have a note here. Because we're seeing, I'm now that this trend is very clear to us, I'm really starting to love the game that a couple of these teams are playing. I have them written down. Some teams that have never podiumed, but also are usually top half table. Raspberry Racers, Minty Maniacs, Chocolatiers, teams like that. I'm loving the game they're playing. I think they're ahead of the curve. They're ahead of the trend. They're playing their game, but they're not exerting themselves too much, and they're really hanging around here.
So it points to this, obviously us included, because episode 2 of the podcast, I believe, included with some of our listeners, we're quick to say, hey, let's establish this point structure. If you podium, you get some points for the following week. But maybe this was Jelles' point all along.
Yeah,
maybe it was to find strategy in these teams and these racers. Maybe teams like, who you mentioned, the Pinkies, the Chocolatiers, the Savage Speeders, some of those teams that have been middle of the pack. Maybe it's, to highlight them and say, hey, the best strategy wins this 100 race challenge.
And then save your stamina for the end of the race. That's a great point.
Absolutely.
That I did not think of. Now, we did not mention in the first podcast that just happened a little bit ago. I'm happy you brought that up. That's a really good point. But now that we're seeing this trend, Green Ducks win, then eliminated next week. Rojo Rollers win, then eliminated next week. What does this mean, do you think, for Team Momo going forward, who just won in week 7?
After all we said about the trends and everything strategic-wise, you won't catch me betting against Team Momo.
Yeah, you've been high on them for the last 3 weeks. Basically every
they
podcast.
Look good. It's a great franchise. Obviously, if you're a fan of Jelles Marble Runs, they've been a program that's been around for forever.
Yeah.
You won't catch me betting against them.
No.
I know the trend. I know the trends. They're going to be just fine, in my opinion.
On the
what do you think about that team?
It worries me. I mean, I'm becoming an analytics guy.
There's some concern there.
There's concern.
For sure.
Just you're seeing now 3 teams that have come in first are now out. Blackjacks, like we touched on, Rojo Rollers, like we touched on, Green Ducks, like we touched on. But who really worries me after this is Bumblebees.
I'm happy you went there because I was about to say that too.
Last week, 2nd place. This week, 2nd place. I'm thinking going forward into week 8, I'm a little bit worried about them and their stamina because Rojo Rollers podium twice, got eliminated, and by a long shot too. And to start the week, we're jumping ahead a little bit to this preview, but Bumblebees bottom 4 finish.
Yeah, spoiler alert there. Kind of goes along with the trend we've been talking about.
Yeah.
Bumblebees, obviously another storied franchise. Swax not performing the way he should have. coming out on elimination Sunday, going into race 1. Is it fatigue? Is it overconfidence? Is he tired? We don't know.
Right.
But it points to our trend that we've been talking about, which is scary for Bumblebee fans everywhere.
It is, and it's a balance here because you want to keep confidence, but you don't want to lose gas. So like you want to be top table, but not necessarily push yourself to be in the 1, 2, and 3 spot. We saw it with Mellow Yellow a couple weeks ago. He
And Yella, yeah.
he 2 weeks ago, first or second place, podiumed. The very next week, barely escaped elimination. It took one
Mm.
race that he climbed out. He was a desperate marble, and you know what that means.
Mm.
So he
Familiar.
just they climbed out, but I'm worried that Bumblebees might not be able to do it.
Yeah, no, agreed. I agree. You know what? I looked down the list a little bit,
Yeah,
and not to bring up a sore subject for you, but
yeah,
as I look at this, this finish on this, obviously we're filming on Monday here, the O Rangers, another team that's been pretty well, podiuming top 5 finishes.
yeah.
Now we're seeing Mandarin coming second to last
We're
here on the
seeing
first race. Does
what I'm
that
seeing.
concern you?
It does, and I'm obviously I'm an Rangers fan, so I track their marble the closest, and it's been streaky. We do have one podium under our belt so thus far in the competition, and like you said, a couple of top 5 finishes, but it's never been consistent. It's been a roller coaster ride, and some weeks it's up, some weeks it's down, but we've fortunately made it through this far. This track, which we'll get into in a minute, is one that I'm worried about for them because I think they're a team that doesn't thrive in a cluster formation and wants to showcase their speed a little bit more. So yes, to answer your question, I am nervous going forward to this next week, especially seeing them come in second to last.
I think obviously we're going to talk about this, next week's tracks very soon here, but I think there's a couple racers, and we'll talk about it, that should be concerned with this track because it races differently than we've seen in the past here.
I mean, yeah. Now that you brought it up, let's talk about it. Initial reaction to the track, just initial reaction to the track, and then hearing the news, the big twist.
So obviously, as you guys have been following along, race 50 here in week 8. Correct me if I'm
Halfway through.
wrong, because I always screw up the weeks here.
Yeah.
Race 50, week 8. We're going to see a track this week with 0 obstacles, which, at first reaction for me specifically, I thought, man, that this track's going to race fast.
Yeah.
But as we watched this race, we saw it slow down a little bit.
Yep.
Little East-West style, juggling for positioning here. It's a different track. I know we were saying off air, I don't know if you love it, which I'd love to hear your opinion about it. I like it. I think it's different. I like how Yella's switching it up here. But I do think it appeals to different teams. I think a team like Momo might have a little adjustment period here. And we saw it with the results here. Maybe he's going to adjust, and maybe it takes a couple days for him to adjust to the new track.
Yeah, it's going to be an adjustment period, no doubt. My first reaction when I saw, just right when the episode started, when I saw the track, I saw the color coordination. I was like, "This is cool. I don't know what's going on here. This seems special." It was a little
Looks
bit
like
pleasing.
Sorry,
It was
board game.
It did. It was pleasing to my brain. And then I saw the little key in the top left that said no obstacles this week, and I thought, okay, I don't love that because I mean we talk about obstacles a lot. We're big obstacle fans. So initial reaction was I'll give it a chance, but like you said, it's a lot of east-west. It's not a lot of north-south. You can't showcase your speed. It's a big congested track, and I'm happy that there were no DNFs. It seems like a week where maybe it's our first week with no DNFs, but I don't love the track because it doesn't allow the marbles to showcase their talent. I'm a big marble talent showcaser fan.
Mm-hmm.
So out of 10, I'll give it a 4.5, maybe a 5.
4.5.
Yeah, I'm a tough grader here.
And how does that number change if the O Rangers came in that top 5?
Yeah, I mean that's an impossible question to answer, but no, it's actually not. I obviously am quite biased, but I think it's probably a 1-point swing if the O Rangers come a little bit higher up in the standings.
We're an honest podcast here.
We're an honest podcast.
I like that answer. At least you're honest here.
But listen, I don't love it either way. I won't let my Rangers fandom get in the way of this podcast. This is where we need to vent our true honesty. So yeah, I don't love the track. Obviously, O'Rangers didn't do well, but it's going to be a tedious track, I think, for both of the watchers and the racers. I think it's going to take a lot of grit, and the racers are going to have to grind this week out.
See, I don't disagree fully, but I do think I'm kind of excited. I would give the track probably a 6.5 out of 10, just because we're going to see some different teams here
Yeah,
perform.
it's a
We
track. It's a track like no other.
we might see some teams that we haven't seen in the past that didn't really stand out, show out in this kind of track.
Yeah,
I don't even know those teams. I can't even tell you them now. But if you're a fan of those teams and you know the style your team plays, maybe your racer shines in this kind of track. It's a different track. Like we said, it's east to west style. It's not as fast. You got to be a little stronger. I'm kind of excited to see where this goes. Ask me on Friday what I would rate this track. It might change
I'll
because
ask you
I
next
agree.
Monday.
We're big fans of the obstacles.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna miss some of the obstacles. I think that adds a great dynamic to the track. But I'm excited to see this week's races because I think they'll be entertaining.
And you know what? It'll feel even better when the obstacles come back next week. Which, knock on wood, hopefully they do. But
Never know.
you never know. We
You,
might just
you
be
never know.
stuck in Colorland.
Absolutely.
Another thing about this track, Ghost Marble couldn't get started today.
So I mean, if you guys are listening, we love the Ghost Marble. We've seen the comments on Reddit, some on Spotify. Everyone's a fan of the Ghost Marble. To my knowledge, I mean, you told me this off air. Ghost Marble had a good week.
Yeah, we'll step back into the week 7 track. Ghost Marble had its best finish yet. It beat 6 marbles.
I think the fans love that too.
It beat 6 marbles on Saturday, so it was also an important race too.
Absolutely, and I think was it a question we touched on last week? Would a Ghost Marble ever win? Did we touch on that last week?
We touched on that, yes.
I mean, great question. I think obviously we saw a little shade of that. Who doesn't love that Ghost Marble? I mean, I find myself rooting for it every time I see it on the track.
Same. It's like a little bigger than the other marbles, and it's just easily identifiable.
And just obviously starting from the last spot, so like you never expect it to go up front. A thing to note too, and we saw it today when we watched the race, that Ghost Marble got lodged in, I believe. It didn't get a jump.
Yeah.
And it kind of got stuck right at the beginning.
I don't even know if it got out of its own starting gate, but
yeah, and Greg mentioned this too, and I didn't really think about it until he said it. That Ghost Marble getting stuck kind of is a big deal to these racers because it won't help them get dislodged.
Yeah.
We might see more DNFs if that Ghost Marble gets lodged in.
Well, I guess you're right. I did say there was no DNFs this week. Unfortunately, Ghost Marble DNF'd.
Oh, man. Hate to hear it.
Okay. So, but right before we hop into our picks, I did want to bring back up, we had touched on it already, so I skipped over it a bit, but our Patron question of the week comes from Tim in Florida, Rojo Rollers fan. He comes to us with, how can you explain Rojo Rollers' performance so far this week? And this was about day 3 of the tournament, right before they DNF'd. They came out the gate cold. And I mean, we touched on it. It just was a stamina. It seems to be a stamina play. Maybe it was just an off week, but it seemed to be their stamina.
We did. I mean, honestly, if you're a Rojo Uno fan, you've heard a lot about him in this podcast.
Yeah.
I kind of agree with Russ here. It's a fatigue thing. It's nothing to be upset about. I think that racer Rojo Uno raced hard all series long.
Too hard, some might say.
I'd blame the coach more. I would blame the team and I blame the coach. I mean, he obviously didn't he went all out too soon.
Pushed him too hard.
So nothing to hang your hat on, nothing to be upset about. But strategically, he didn't have the plan.
And maybe, like we talked about also, a lot of teams maybe have already known this and had this mentality that have just been hanging around. And maybe we've been harping on how they've just seemed mid-table. And we could see them in this back half that we're about to get into rise to the top and perform when it really matters.
100%. We should see that going forward. I'm excited for it.
Speaking of, let's get into our picks for this week. You want me to go first? Because you're normally,
I usually go first. So let's hear your picks. I usually steal yours.
All right. Winners this week. I got Limers and Mellow Yellow. I think Mellow Yellow is due for a bounce back week. They, like we talked about, they struggled in the week after their podium, and I think they're going to bounce back here. They're a strong marble, and we talked about the congestedness of this track and how much it requires your strength. I think Mellow Yellow is going to play well to that. And Limers, I think they're due, and I think maybe your luck is starting to turn now that you've escaped the cut line. Maybe you rise all the way to the top. And I would like to also mention that me picking you as a winner is not necessarily a good thing, because like we just talked about, being mid-table could be where you want to be.
100%. I mean, as a I'd come in 10th.
Yeah.
I'm good with that.
Yeah.
Just get me to race 60, get me to race 70.
Absolutely.
So I agree. I mean, it's not really a good thing that you picked us.
And then for losers, I got Bumblebees and Team Momo for reasons I touched on earlier. Just it's a trend now. The analytics are out. We got Green Ducks winning, losing, Rojo Rollers winning, now eliminated. Bumblebees had back-to-back second place finishes. So I especially with this, now that the field is getting trimmed down to 18, is we are halfway through. I'm just worried about them, and Team Momo for the same reason. They pushed themselves hard last week. I'm a little bit worried about them going into this week and this tough track that is very demanding.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I'm going to totally go against you here because Bumblebees are a team I thought should podium this week.
Yeah.
I'm pretty confident in them. And just for you viewers out there, we picked these before the race on Monday.
Yep.
So obviously we picked these not knowing the results of, Monday's results,
Yeah.
round one. Obviously we see them now, so I feel like a big idiot. But Bumblebees, I think, are a good squad. I think they have been performing well, go against the trend. I like them to finish in the podium. The other team I pick is the Pinkies. I just think they're a team that keeps hanging around. Haven't talked about them much, but obviously to the points we made, for a good reason. I think they could, perform well in this kind of track. A team that I don't think will
make it through. Two teams that you don't think will make it through. Who's getting cut this week, Shim?
And I think you can guess one of them. I think the fans out there listening can guess one of them pretty easy.
If you've listened to the last few weeks,
the Oceanics need to go. They need to go, and I think they will go. And that's a Shim guarantee right there. I can look at the camera and say that. That's a Shim guarantee. C is just no leader. He's just not a team room guy. He's just, it's not what we need in Jelles Marbles Runs.
They have one podium so far this time.
And they're going to go this week.
Okay.
And I'm pretty confident in that. So that's a guarantee coming from me.
All right, we'll see if that plays out. And did you give us another team?
I was so focused on the Oceanics, but another team not as passionate about this one, but Indigo Stars. I do think, a team that hasn't really shocked me or disappointed me much, but you know what? I just see them falling this week. They haven't ran well.
Not a big name.
I think they get eliminated this week.
Fair enough. Any final thoughts you want to give before we close out here?
Final thoughts. I mean, this is the second time running this through, so it's been a long night. If you guys have any questions, segment ideas, anything you guys want us to do on the podcast, we'd love to hear it. Obviously, we're trying this new video thing. I think hopefully it's going well. Hope you guys like it. We're new to it. I think the whole thing is new, but we're doing pretty good for our fourth podcast. It feels good.
Yeah, I think so. A 4.5 podcast, because like you said, we just recorded a full 30 something minutes before this, but we're not going to complain. We're just having fun. It's fun to do this. It's really fun to bring this to you guys. So yeah, leave us any comments about what you want to see, what you don't want to see, questions you have that we will mention going forward. Subscribe to the YouTube channel.
Why not?
Why not?
Let's get this thing going.
Yeah, keep this thing going. You can see us every week, every Monday.
Something I like, not to interject, but those questions they're awesome.
They are.
Whether it's Reddit, YouTube, Spotify, Apple Music, throw us those questions, because I think that it's fun on the pod to talk about those questions. Something that we haven't thought about, just anything you guys think that we missed.
Right, we're all ears.
We're all ears for it, because there's certainly a lot of content being produced by Yella.
Oh, a ton. Yeah. I can't wait. I'm just so excited for this back half of this tournament, just to keep whittling this field down till we get to the top 10, and I cannot wait.
If you're not refreshing YouTube every hour,
2 p.m.
every
2 p.m.
second,
Eastern.
Every 2 p.m., what are you doing? Because it just keeps getting better every day.
I'm fully caught up in the Marble fever. But yeah, thank you guys so much for tuning in. Thanks for watching or listening. Either way, give us your thoughts, and we'll talk to you next week. Rolling out.
Roll out.
See ya.
Limers.